When I landed in New York after 2 years in Tokyo, I couldn't wait to see the apartment I'd worked my entire 20s for. Every dollar I saved, every sleepless night, it all led to that golden key in my hand. But when I tried to unlock the door, it wouldn't turn. A man I didn't know stepped out and said, "You're at the wrong address. This apartment was sold." My stomach dropped. My name was still on the contract, or so I believed. I called my mother, shaking. She said softly, "We had no choice, Chloe. Your sister's debts were destroying us." Family comes first? Family, the word echoed like a curse. That was the moment I learned love doesn't justify betrayal, and blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. I used to think my family was ordinary. We weren't rich, but we had enough to get by. My parents, Linda and Robert, ran a small hardware shop in Queens. I was the quiet daughter, the one who followed the rules, who studied late, who never asked for anything. My sister Emma was the opposite. She was bright, loud, and breathtakingly careless. The kind of girl everyone noticed when she walked into a room. Growing up, it was always Emma this, Emma that. Emma needs new shoes for her dance recital. Emma deserves a better phone for her followers. My achievements were never celebrated, only expected. I graduated with honors, landed an internship at a financial firm, and no one even showed up to my ceremony. That same day, my parents posted pictures of Emma modeling a designer bag on Instagram with the caption, "Our shining star." I learned early that love in my family wasn't given, it was earned, and no matter how hard I worked, I could never outshine her. Still, I didn't resent Emma, I just wanted distance. That's why, at 24, I took a job offer in Tokyo. My parents said I was selfish for leaving, but I knew I had to go. In Tokyo, no one knew me as Emma's sister. I built a career, saved every dollar, and by 29, I finally bought my first home, a small penthouse in Manhattan. The day I signed the papers, I sent a photo to my parents. I thought they'd be proud. My mother replied, "That's nice, Chloe. Make sure to keep a spare key here. You never know when you'll need family." I remember hesitating before mailing it, but guilt won. I thought they'd never abuse that trust. Meanwhile, Emma's world was spinning out of control. She'd become a social media star with 3 million followers, posting unboxing videos, luxury trips, and photo shoots that cost more than my monthly salary. I rarely watched her content, but every now and then it popped up on my feed. Emma sipping champagne on a yacht, tagging designer brands, writing captions about gratitude. I didn't know that behind those perfect photos was a mountain of debt. When I visited home that Christmas, I noticed tension between my parents. They avoided eye contact every time I mentioned Emma. Later, I overheard them whispering in the kitchen. "She's 3 months behind," my father said. "The sponsors are pulling out." My mother whispered back, "We can't let her ruin her name. She's our only hope." That phrase haunted me, our only hope. I was standing just outside the door, holding a cup of tea, realizing I wasn't even in that equation. To them, I wasn't hope. I was insurance, someone responsible enough to clean up the mess when Emma fell. Before I returned to Tokyo, I left them my spare key in a little white envelope with a note that said "only for emergencies." My mother hugged me and said, "You're a good girl, Chloe." I believed her. Now, standing outside my locked apartment, that memory made my stomach twist. I had given them that key with love, and they had used it as a weapon. They didn't just sell a property, they sold the proof of my independence. Looking back, maybe it wasn't the first time they crossed that line. It was just the first time I refused to let them. The night after finding my apartment gone, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the unfamiliar Airbnb bed, staring at the small envelope that used to hold my golden key. It felt almost unreal, like maybe I had misread everything, like the truth would somehow fix itself by morning. But when I opened my laptop and logged into my mortgage account, the screen confirmed my worst fear. Ownership transferred, new buyer, Emma Grace. For a long moment, I just stared at the words. The cursor blinked like it was mocking me. I checked the date, 3 weeks ago. My parents had done it while I was still in Tokyo, maybe even while I was on a video call telling them how excited I was to move back. The next thing I did was open my email. There were messages from the bank I'd never seen, requests for verification, change of contact, final settlement confirmation. All of them marked as read. Someone had accessed my account, someone who had my documents, someone who had my key. I called my father first. He didn't pick up, then my mother. Her voice was calm, casual, even cheerful. Chloe, you're back. How was your flight? Mom, I said, my voice shaking, did you sell my apartment? A pause, then a sigh. Honey, don't say it like that. We didn't sell your apartment. We just used it to help Emma. You're single, you're young, you'll get another one. I couldn't even speak. I heard my father in the background saying, she'll understand when she grows up. Mom, I whispered, you forged my signature. We didn't forge anything, she snapped. We signed for you. Families share everything. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. My body felt cold, heavy. For the first time in years, I realized just how disposable I was to them. An hour later, I got a notification from Instagram. Emma had posted a new photo, her in front of a luxury store, holding a new designer bag with the caption, "Fresh start, family always has your back." The comment section was full of hearts and fire emojis. To the world, she was an inspiration. To me, she was the thief who'd stolen my future. I spent the rest of the night digging. Every document, every payment record, every email. The more I found, the more everything aligned. My parents had contacted the realtor using my spare key, pretended to be my representatives, and closed the deal through a private buyer connected to Emma's brand sponsors. By sunrise, the shock had burned away. What was left wasn't sadness, it was clarity. They thought I would stay quiet out of guilt, that I'd accept it because we shared blood. But they had underestimated what I'd learned living alone in a city that never pitied weakness. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I was going to make them face what they'd done. That night, I walked for hours through the city, the wind cutting against my skin, my suitcase trailing behind me like a reminder of everything I'd lost. The streets were loud, but inside my chest there was only silence. I ended up at the edge of the Hudson River, staring at the skyline I used to see from my own living room window. Now it belonged to someone else, bought with the money I earned, sold with the signature I didn't give. I pulled the golden key from my coat pocket. For years, I'd kept it on a chain, a symbol of what I thought freedom looked like. It felt cold against my palm. I thought of every night I stayed late at the office, of every time I sent money home when they said Emma just needed a little help. I realized how perfectly I had played the role they wrote for me, the quiet, reliable daughter who never said no. The longer I stood there, the more that image burned away. The city lights reflected on the water, flickering like a promise. I opened my hand and let the key fall. It hit the surface, sank, and disappeared. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. That key didn't represent freedom anymore. It represented obedience, and I was done obeying. When I returned to the Airbnb, I opened my laptop again, this time not as a victim. I started documenting everything, the fake documents, the transaction IDs, the forged emails. I organized them into folders named after my parents, my sister, and the realtor who helped them. For every memory that hurt, I added one more piece of proof. Somewhere between exhaustion and rage, I started to see the path forward. If they wanted to use family as an excuse, then I would show them what accountability looked like. I wasn't just going to take back what they stole. I was going to expose the truth so completely that even their favorite word, family, would never protect them again. By dawn, the sun rose over Manhattan, lighting up the skyline with gold. I looked at it and made myself a promise. They might have taken my home, but they would never take my power again. This time I would fight, and I would win. The next morning, I sat in a coffee shop near Madison Square Park, staring at the list of lawyers on my screen. I didn't know where to start. Every name looked the same, every face too polished, too distant. Then I saw one that stopped me. Ethan Miller, property attorney. I hadn't spoken to him in 3 years. Ethan wasn't just a lawyer. He was the man I once planned a future with, before my career took me overseas and distance turned love into silence. I hovered over his profile for a long time. Part of me hesitated. Reaching out meant reopening doors I'd locked long ago. But another part of me knew, if I wanted justice, he was the only one I could trust. When he picked up the phone, his voice was exactly as I remembered, steady, calm, impossible to read. "Chloe, it's been a while." "I need your help," I said quietly. "My parents sold my apartment. They forged everything." There was a pause. I could almost hear him processing, the faint tap of his pen against the desk. "Come to my office this afternoon," he said. "Bring everything you have." By the time I got there, my hands were trembling, but my mind was clear. Ethan's office overlooked the city, sleek and minimalist, filled with the kind of order my life had lost. He stood when I walked in, his expression softening for just a second before he slipped into professional mode. "You look different," he said. I had to be. I laid out the documents, my laptop, the screenshots of the mortgage transfer. He read in silence for several minutes. When he looked up, his voice was low but firm. "This isn't just unethical, Chloe, it's criminal. Forgery, unauthorized sale, identity theft. They used family as a shield, but the law doesn't recognize emotional excuses." Something inside me broke loose at his words, not from pain but from validation. For the first time, someone wasn't asking me to understand. Someone was calling it what it was, a crime. Over the next few days, Ethan and I worked like a team. We contacted the bank, retrieved server logs showing who had accessed my accounts, traced the IP addresses to my parents' home network. The realtor who processed the sale had received direct emails from my mother, written under my name. Everything was documented, everything was clear. Late one night, we sat across from each other in his office, surrounded by folders and empty coffee cups. "Why didn't you ever tell me about them before?" he asked quietly. "Because I thought if I worked hard enough, I could earn their respect. I was wrong." He nodded slowly. "Then let's make this right." The next day, I made a decision that would change everything. I took the story online, not under my real name, but anonymously. I posted the entire situation on a subreddit called Family Revenge Stories. I uploaded redacted documents, explained how my parents sold my apartment to pay off my sister's debts, and ended with one simple line: "Sometimes the people who preach about family are the ones who destroy it." Within hours, the post exploded. Thousands of comments flooded in, people sharing their own stories, strangers offering support, lawyers analyzing my case, journalists asking for contact. One comment stood out: "File charges. Don't let guilt protect criminals, even if they share your DNA." For the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone. The world saw what I had lived through, and they called it by its true name. Ethan looked at the screen, a faint smile in his eyes. "You've already won half the battle," he said. "Now let's finish it properly." And in that moment, something shifted. The fear I'd carried for years was gone, replaced by a steady, quiet power. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was the storm coming for everything they thought they could take from me. A week later, Ethan called me into his office. His tone was composed, but his eyes carried the sharpness of a man who knew exactly what he was about to unleash. "It's time," he said. "I've sent a formal notice to your parents and the realtor. They'll have to respond within 72 hours. I felt my chest tighten. Part of me wanted to hide, to crawl back into the silence I knew so well. But another part, the part that had survived every humiliation and stayed standing, was ready. That afternoon, Ethan and I sat across from my parents and Emma in the conference room of his law firm. The city glowed behind the glass walls, the skyline watching silently like a jury. My father sat rigid, jaw tight, while my mother held a tissue she didn't need. Emma had her phone face down on the table, as if she might live stream the drama the moment she felt cornered. Ethan began calmly, sliding a stack of documents across the table. "Mrs. and Mr. Grace, you are being accused of forging your daughter's signature, falsifying legal authorization, and selling a property without consent. All evidence has been verified." My mother let out a brittle laugh. "You make it sound like a crime. We're her parents. Families help each other." Ethan didn't blink. "Families don't override the law. Forging her name on a sale contract is fraud, regardless of blood." My father leaned forward, voice rising. "We did it to protect Emma. She was drowning in debt. What kind of sister refuses to help?" I met his gaze, steady. "The kind who worked 10 years for something and watched you throw it away in 3 weeks. You didn't protect her. You taught her that destruction has no price." Emma rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, you make it sound so tragic." "You were in Tokyo living your best life. I was trying to survive." "Survive?" I repeated. "You spent my savings on handbags and champagne." The room went still. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Ethan opened another folder. "Here are the emails from your address, Mrs. Grace, using Chloe's digital signature. Here are the transaction records, traced to your IP. Here are the text messages to the realtor arranging the sale. Would you like me to read them aloud?" My mother's face drained of color. My father's hands tightened on the table. Emma looked between them, her confidence cracking. "This is ridiculous," my mother snapped. "You think the police will arrest parents for helping their child?" Ethan leaned back, his voice even colder. "They already have the file. If you prefer, We can move this meeting downtown. For the first time, I saw something new in my father's eyes. Fear. Not guilt. Fear of consequence. He turned to me, voice softening like it always did when he needed control. Chloe, sweetheart, we can fix this. The house was just a thing. We'll pay you back. Let's not ruin the family over money. I almost laughed. Money. They had never understood what it truly was about. It's not about the house, I said quietly. It's about what you took from me. You took my trust, my independence, my belief that blood meant safety. You don't get to buy that back. My mother's voice broke into a whimper. You're hurting your father. I looked at her and said he hurt himself the moment he decided my life was his to spend. Emma pushed back her chair, anger flashing. You're loving this, aren't you? Playing the victim for the internet. I turned to her, my voice low. The internet didn't make you a thief. You did that yourself. Ethan slid one final document across the table. Under state law, Chloe has full right to reclaim ownership. The sale will be voided and damages pursued. I suggest you cooperate before this escalates further. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the city outside. Then my father exhaled, defeated. You'll regret this, Chloe. One day, when we're gone, you'll understand we did this for love. No, I said softly. Yeah, you did it for control, and I'm done living under it. The meeting ended in silence. As they left, Emma glanced back at me, her face pale beneath the makeup. For the first time, she wasn't angry. She was scared. Outside the office, Ethan and I stood on the sidewalk. The wind carried the noise of New York traffic, honking, shouting, life moving on. That was the hardest part, he said. I shook my head. No, the hardest part was believing they'd ever change. That night, the story broke online. Someone on Reddit had connected the dots between my post and Emma's public life. Screenshots flooded every platform, her luxury purchases, her sudden disappearance, my parents' store going dark. Hashtags trended, sponsors dropped her. When I saw her face on a tabloid headline, influencer accused in family fraud case, I didn't smile. I didn't feel victorious, I just felt the quiet weight of justice landing where it belonged. Ethan called later that evening. The police have confirmed they'll open an investigation. They'll question them in the morning. Good, I said. Let them finally answer to someone who doesn't call them family. As I hung up, I stood by the window, watching the city lights blur through the glass. For years, I had been the invisible daughter, the responsible one who never spoke out. But tonight, the silence was broken, and I wasn't invisible anymore. Within 48 hours, everything that my family had built on lies began to collapse. Emma's name was everywhere, on Twitter, Reddit, news channels, even morning talk shows. Influencer accused of selling sister's apartment, the headlines read. Reporters camped outside my parents' home, and every time the door opened, flashes lit up like lightning. Emma tried to fight back at first. She posted a video titled, "The Truth They Don't Want You to Know," crying under perfect lighting, saying she was the victim of a family misunderstanding, but the comments turned brutal within minutes. People dug up her past posts, her brand deals, her lavish spending. Someone even leaked her credit card statements. Her followers dropped by the thousands. Every brand partnership she had vanished overnight. My parents didn't handle it any better. Their hardware store's online page was flooded with one-star reviews and angry comments about theft and manipulation. They shut it down within a day. My mother called me in tears, her voice trembling. Chloe, please, we're ruined. Your father can't even go outside. They're calling us monsters. I listened, but I didn't feel the guilt she wanted me to. Mom, I said quietly, you did that yourselves. We never meant for it to go this far, she sobbed. You never meant to get caught, I replied, then ended the call. For years I had carried the weight of being the good daughter. I had stayed silent to keep the peace, let them take and take until there was nothing left. Now I finally understood that peace built on silence is just another kind of prison. That night, Ethan came by my apartment with takeout and 2 cups of coffee. We sat by the window, the city glowing below us. You did the right thing, he said. Justice isn't always loud, it's just permanent. I nodded, watching the traffic lights flicker. Somewhere across the city, my family was facing the storm they created. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel responsible for fixing it. Ethan reached into his pocket and placed something in my hand, a new golden key. It's time to start over, he said. I looked at it, felt its weight, and whispered, This one, I won't give away. Weeks passed, and the noise around the scandal began to fade, replaced by the quiet hum of consequence. Emma disappeared from social media entirely. Her once glossy influencer life unraveled faster than anyone expected. The apartment she'd been living in, the one bought with my stolen savings, was repossessed by the bank. The luxury handbags she flaunted online were listed on resale sites by anonymous sellers. A cousin told me through a message that Emma had moved back in with my parents in Queens. My father's business had gone under. Their savings, already drained from paying Emma's debts, were now gone completely after legal fees and settlement costs. They sold their car, then their vacation house, then everything that could be turned into cash. The people who once lived on image and pride were now counting coins to buy groceries. I thought I'd feel satisfied hearing it, but all I felt was distance. There was no joy, no revenge high. Only the cold realization that justice doesn't always feel good, it just feels right. One evening, I received a letter in my mailbox. The handwriting was my father's, neat, measured, familiar. Chloe, it read, "We've lost everything. Your mother's health is failing, and Emma isn't herself anymore. We're not asking for money, we just want to talk, maybe one dinner, one chance to make things right." I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. I didn't rip it up, but I didn't reply either. For years, they had turned my silence into consent. This time, my silence was a boundary. A few days later, I walked past their old shop. The windows were covered in dust, the for lease sign swinging in the wind. I stood there for a while, not out of nostalgia, but as a witness to the consequences they had earned. People often say karma is poetic, but it isn't poetry, it's math. You take what doesn't belong to you, and sooner or later, the universe balances the equation. As I turned to leave, I realized I didn't need them to apologize anymore. Their suffering wasn't my revenge, it was their reflection. A year after everything collapsed, I finally felt air filling my lungs again. Not the kind that just keeps you alive, but the kind that makes you feel free. I had moved into a new apartment in Brooklyn, smaller than the one I lost, but entirely mine. No ghosts, no borrowed promises, no shared keys. Every piece of furniture, every photo on the wall was a reminder that I built this life myself. But I knew my story wasn't just about loss. It was about others like me, people who'd been manipulated in the name of family, guilted into silence, stripped of everything they'd worked for. That's why I used the compensation money from the lawsuit to create something new, the Golden Key Foundation. The name came to me one night as I stared at my reflection in the window, holding the new key Ethan had given me. I realized the first key I ever owned opened a door for others to take from me. This one would open doors for people who needed a way out. The foundation started small, just a few volunteers, one office room, and a mission to help victims of financial abuse by family members reclaim their independence. We partnered with legal aid organizations, financial advisors, and support groups. Within months, people began sharing their stories, thanking us for giving them the courage to fight back. Every time someone walked in crying and left with a plan, I felt something heal inside me too. Ethan stayed by my side through all of it. What began as legal support turned into something deeper, steadier. He never pushed for more, never asked for forgiveness for the years apart. He just stayed, helping me build something better from the ashes. One evening, after our first anniversary of the foundation, we stood by the office window overlooking the East River. The sky was turning gold over the water. Ethan handed me a small velvet box. Inside was a key, this one silver, engraved with the words "For New Beginnings." He said, "Every time you unlock a door for someone else, you rewrite your own story." I smiled, tears threatening to fall for the first time in a long while. For the first time, I whispered, "I'm not opening a door to escape, I'm opening one to grow." Later that night, I walked back to my apartment and placed that silver key beside the golden one on my desk. 2 keys, 2 lives, one lost to betrayal, one built on strength. Outside, the city lights shimmered like scattered gold on the water. I took a deep breath and finally understood. Justice wasn't revenge. It was the quiet peace that comes when you take your life back, one lock at a time. A year later, I found myself standing once again by the Hudson River, the same place where I had once thrown my golden key into the water. The wind was softer now, the city quieter, or maybe it was just me who had changed. I wasn't the woman who cried over lost trust anymore. I was the woman who built something unshakable from it. The Golden Key Foundation had grown beyond anything I imagined. We had opened branches in 3 cities, helped hundreds of people reclaim stolen assets, and more importantly, given them their confidence back. Every story reminded me that betrayal doesn't define you, how you rise from it does. That evening, we hosted an anniversary event in the same apartment building I once called home. It wasn't the same unit, but the view was almost identical. As I stood by the window, the skyline stretched out before me, bright, alive, untouchable. Ethan joined me, his hand resting gently on my shoulder. "Do you ever think about them?" he asked. "Sometimes," I said, "but not with anger, more like remembering an old scar. It doesn't hurt anymore, but I still see where it cut." He smiled. "That's what healing looks like." We stood there for a moment, the city buzzing beneath us. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out a small box. Inside was a replica of the original golden key, engraved this time with the words "Freedom Earned." I opened the window and let the wind take it from my hand. The key spun once, catching the golden light before falling toward the river below. "I used to think closure meant getting justice," I said softly. "Now I know it means letting go." Ethan nodded, his voice quiet but certain. "You didn't lose your family, Chloe. You just found yourself." As the last glimmer of the key disappeared into the twilight, I felt something lift off my chest, a weight I'd carried for years. The skyline blurred with tears I didn't fight this time. They weren't tears of pain, they were proof that I'd survived it all. In that golden light, I whispered the words that had become the truth of my story. "Family can betray you, but freedom is the family you choose."